There's a man sitting in a truck outside 1247 Sycamore Trail. He's been there for over 20 minutes. I think he's watching the children.
That's the 911 call. That's what the HOA president of Ridgewood Estates told the Gwinnett County dispatcher at 9:14 on a Tuesday night. Officer Pruitt arrived with his flashlight drawn. What he found was a 42-year-old father sitting in his own truck, in his own driveway, reading the news on his phone. The engine was off. The windows were down. His 9-year-old son was asleep upstairs. She knew exactly who I was. She'd met me the day I moved in, but she told the dispatcher I was watching children. This woman had called 911 47 times in 6 years. 5 families were driven out. 0 arrests. She didn't know the quiet man in the flannel shirt had just been sworn in as police chief, and every word of that 911 call was about to become the evidence that got her handcuffed. Tell me, what would you do? The first time I drove into Ridgewood Estates, the Georgia sun was sitting low behind the pine trees, and the air smelled like warm clay and fresh-cut grass. My wife Shelby was in the passenger seat, flipping through the school enrollment packet for our son Colton. He was 9, asleep in the back with his baseball glove tucked under his arm like a pillow. I'd just been appointed police chief of Briarfield, small town 25 minutes west, the kind of job you spend 20 years working toward. Shelby was an ER nurse at Gwinnett Medical, and Ridgewood put us halfway between both our jobs. Good school district, quiet streets. I didn't tell the neighbors what I did for a living. I just didn't want to be the cop on the block. I wanted to mow my grass, grill on weekends, and watch Colton throw baseballs in the backyard. Normal life. That's all I wanted. We pulled in around 2 with the moving truck right behind us. Boxes were stacking up on the porch when I heard the Escalade. White Cadillac, tinted windows. It rolled to a stop in front of my driveway like a checkpoint. Out stepped Pamela Thornton. Platinum blonde hair pulled tight, pressed linen blazer over black yoga pants, clipboard tucked under one arm, and the kind of walk that said she owned every square foot between the entrance gate and the cul-de-sac. She didn't introduce herself, didn't say welcome. She walked straight past me, circled the moving truck, then turned to the F-150 and wrinkled her nose like she'd found a dead raccoon under the porch. "Commercial vehicles aren't permitted on this street past 6 p.m., she said, not looking at me. "You'll need to have this wrapped up by then." It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I nodded. "We'll be done well before that, ma'am." She walked around the F-150, touched the tailgate with one finger like she was testing for dust. "And this truck, is this staying?" "That's my daily driver." She wrote something on her clipboard, slowly, deliberately, making sure I could hear the pen scratching, and walked back to the Escalade. Didn't say goodbye. The window glided up like a drawbridge closing behind her. Shelby came up beside me holding a box of kitchen stuff, the packing tape still dangling. Did that woman just inspect our truck like a health code violation? I almost laughed. Almost. That evening, our neighbor 2 doors down walked over carrying a 6-pack of Sweetwater. Hank Sellers, retired electrician, 60-something, sun-weathered face. The kind of guy who builds a deck on Saturday and brings you the leftover lumber on Sunday. "Welcome to Ridgewood," he said, "and welcome to Pamela's kingdom." I cracked a beer. The aluminum tab hissed, and the can was cold enough to sweat against my palm. I could smell the hops mixing with pine sap drifting in from the tree line at the edge of the subdivision. "The last family on this lot lasted 8 months, Hank said quietly. "Nice people. She drove them out. Violations for everything. Trash cans visible on pickup day, basketball hoop 2 inches over height limit. She called the cops on them 3 times in the first month." I looked at Colton through the front window. He was arranging his baseball cards on the carpet of his new room. And for a second, the whole house felt warm and quiet and exactly right. Then the doorbell rang. 9 p.m. Officer Wade Pruitt, Gwinnett County Patrol. Polite, clearly uncomfortable, standing under my porch light with his hat in his hands. "Sir, we received a call about a suspicious commercial vehicle at this address. The moving truck. Parked legally. On my property. At my house. On the day I moved in." I thanked him. He apologized. He left. I stood in the doorway and felt the warm night air press against my face like a damp cloth. First night in my new home. First 911 call. Somewhere down the street, the Escalade's garage door hummed shut. The first violation letter showed up 6 days later. I found it in the mailbox on a Monday morning. Cream-colored envelope, HOA seal stamped in the corner. My name misspelled as Calloway. Inside was a single page with the header, Vehicle Aesthetic Standards Violation. The letter stated that my 2009 Ford F-150 was aged, visibly deteriorated, and inconsistent with the visual standards established for Ridgewood Estates. The fine, $200 per day until the vehicle was brought into compliance or permanently removed from the property. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold and read it twice. Then I pulled out my copy of the CC&Rs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that every homeowner agrees to when they buy in. I'd read the whole thing before closing. Call it professional habit. I went through every section on vehicles. Parking restrictions. Yes. No blocking sidewalks or fire hydrants. Commercial signage. Yes. No business logos on personal vehicles. Vehicle storage. Yes. No inoperable vehicles on blocks for more than 30 days. But vehicle age? Nothing. Vehicle model? Nothing. Aesthetic standards for trucks? Not a single line in 47 pages. Here's the thing most homeowners don't realize. In Georgia, an HOA can only fine you for violating a rule that's actually written in the recorded CC and Rs. If the rule doesn't exist in that document, the fine has no legal teeth. It's not a gray area. It's settled law. So, Pamela's $200 a day threat was worth exactly the paper it was printed on. I typed up a formal response, cited the exact CC and R sections, pointed out that no vehicle aesthetic standard existed anywhere in the governing documents, mailed it certified with return receipt requested, because paper trails are only useful if you can prove someone received them. 3 days later, a second violation arrived. This one read, driveway maintenance violation. The complaint, oil stains on my driveway. The fine, $150. I walked outside and looked at the concrete. The driveway was clean. Pressure washed clean. I'd done it myself the weekend before, with Colton helping me spray the edges, both of us soaked by the time we finished. There were no oil stains, not a drop. She was fabricating violations, printing official-looking letters on HOA stationery, assigning dollar amounts with the confidence of a woman who'd been doing this for years, and counting on the fact that most people would rather write a check than fight back. I showed both letters to Hank that evening over beers on his back porch. He listened, nodded, and then disappeared into his garage. He came back carrying a shoebox, not a metaphor, an actual Nike shoebox, lid held on with a rubber band so old it was starting to crack. 4 years of these, he said, setting it on the patio table and pulling off the lid. Inside was a stack of violation letters half an inch thick. She fined me for having a garden hose visible from the street. I measured. The hose was behind my fence, coiled against the house. She fined me for a garbage can lid being open on collection day. The truck hadn't even come yet. He flipped through more. Fines for a satellite dish angle. Fines for a porch light being too yellow. Fines for a welcome mat that was not consistent with community aesthetic guidelines. A welcome mat. Did you fight any of them? I asked. I fought the first 5. She doubled every one. I stopped fighting after that. The next morning I was at the mailbox when the white Escalade pulled up. Pamela's window slid down with a mechanical hum. She had her sunglasses on despite the overcast sky, and I could smell her perfume from the curb, something floral and suffocating, like a department store had held its breath too long. I see you got my letters, Mr. Calloway. She said my name slowly, like it left a taste she didn't enjoy. I did. This isn't negotiable. The board has spoken. The board or you? She tilted her chin up, her lips pressed thin. Maybe if you could afford a real car, you wouldn't have to park that junkyard reject in front of decent people's homes. I let that hang in the air between us, felt the weight of it, decided not to swing back. Have a good day, ma'am. I walked inside. Behind me, the window hummed shut like a verdict being sealed. That night, after Colton was asleep and the house was quiet, I sat on the back porch with Shelby. The crickets were screaming their June symphony, and the air smelled like honeysuckle climbing the fence line. "She's making up rules," I told her. Shelby set her tea down on the arm of the chair. "So, what are you going to do?" "What I always do. Build a case." I opened a new folder on my laptop, named it Thornton, started scanning the violation letters, the C's, C, and R's, the certified mail receipts, and the photos I'd taken of the spotless driveway. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet voice said, "This isn't about a truck. This has never been about a truck." 3 weeks after we moved in, I was at the station working through a budget review when Shelby called. Her voice was tight, not panic, but controlled anger looking for a target. "Garrett, there's a tow truck in our driveway." "What?" "A flatbed. The driver is hooking up the F-150 right now, and she's here, standing in our yard, directing him like it's her personal construction site." I grabbed my keys. The drive from Briarfield took 22 minutes, the longest 22 minutes of that entire summer. When I turned onto Sycamore Trail, the tow truck was still there. Engine idling, heavy chain looped around my truck's front axle. Pamela was standing 3 feet from my front walkway, holding a piece of paper up like a warrant from the Queen of England. Shelby was between Pamela and the truck, with her arms crossed and her jaw set. "Ma'am, this is a private driveway," the tow driver was saying. Heavy-set guy in a gray coverall, patch reading Earl's Towing. "I need the property owner's consent or a court order. I can't just hook up and go." "I have authorization right here," Pamela said, waving the paper. "I'm the president of the Ridgewood Estates Homeowners Association. This vehicle is in violation of community standards." The driver took the paper. HOA letterhead, vehicle removal order, signs by Pamela Thornton. No court seal, no county stamp, no legal weight. "That's not a court order, ma'am. I'm sorry, I can't do this." Pamela turned the color of raw hamburger. She jabbed her finger toward Shelby. "Your husband's truck is dragging down every home value on this street. If you can't control him, I will." Shelby didn't flinch. "Get off my driveway, right now. You people think you can just move in and ignore everything?" Pamela's voice was climbing now, high and sharp enough to carry across 3 lawns. "I've been here 9 years. I built this neighborhood. I am the rules." The tow driver unhooked the chain. The sound of it scraping across concrete cut through the thick air like a zipper being ripped. He climbed into his cab and disappeared. The diesel exhaust hung in the driveway, mixing with the July heat until everything smelled like hot asphalt in frustration. I stood by my sedan watching, hadn't approached, hadn't identified myself, just observed. Pamela peeled out, squealed the tires on a residential street at 2 in the afternoon. Shelby walked over to me, hands shaking, voice rock steady. "She tried to tow our truck off our property, Garrett, while our son was home. He watched the whole thing from his window." Colton was standing behind his bedroom curtain, face pressed against the glass, looking down at the driveway where a stranger had just tried to steal our truck while his mother stood guard. That weekend, I installed 4 security cameras, 2 on the house, front and back, 1 aimed directly at the driveway, 1 covering the mailbox and the street approach, all hardwired to a cloud backup that saved every frame every 30 seconds. No gaps, no dead zones. I filed a formal complaint with Gwinnett County regarding the unauthorized towing attempt. Cited OCGA Section 44-1-13. Under Georgia law, towing a vehicle from private property without the owner's written consent or a valid court order is a criminal offense. The tow company itself can face civil liability. The county gave me a reference number and opened a file. Most people don't know this about HOA enforcement. An HOA board can levy fines, they can send letters, they can place liens, but they cannot physically remove your property from your land without going through a court. No board vote, no president's signature, no removal order printed on community stationery gives anyone the right to touch your belongings on your own property. The moment Pamela ordered that tow truck onto my driveway, she broke the law. I didn't tell Shelby what I was building. Not yet. Some things need to be finished before you show them. That night I added the tow company documentation, the county complaint receipt, and 6 time-stamped camera screenshots to the folder. Shelby came into the kitchen, saw the folder on the table, and read the label. "Thornton," she said quietly. I looked up. Not yet, but soon. She nodded once and went to check on Colton. I sat listening to the house settle. The AC clicked on. A tree frog chirped outside the window. The folder was getting thicker, and I was getting more patient than Pamela Thornton had ever imagined. 6 weeks into Ridgewood, Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. I was sitting in my F-150 in my own driveway with the windows down, reading on my phone, engine off, nothing but cicadas and the faint hum of someone's pool pump 2 houses over. Long shifts do that to me. After 12 hours of phone calls and budget meetings, I sit in the truck for 15 minutes. Let the day drain out. Shelby knows. She leaves the porch light on and gives me the space. At 9:14, a flashlight beam sliced through the passenger window and hit me square in the face.
Mr. Calloway?
Officer Wade Pruitt. Again. Same patrol car, same reluctant posture, same county-issued flashlight cutting through the Georgia dark.
We received a call, sir.
Report of a male subject sitting in a vehicle in the dark, possibly conducting surveillance on the neighborhood. I looked at him. Wade, I live here. This is my truck. I'm reading the news on my phone. I know, sir. Believe me, I know. He glanced at his notepad. The caller described you as an unfamiliar male in an older model truck, behaving erratically. You've been here 6 weeks. Erratically, I repeated, sitting still, reading my phone, in my own driveway. That's what the dispatch log says. I showed him my license. He documented the response. Badge number, time, disposition. He apologized. He left. I sat in the truck for another 5 minutes on pure principle.
But the 911 call wasn't the worst part.
3 days later, Hank Sellers walked across his lawn with his face set in that expression people wear when they're carrying news that's going to hurt. I need to tell you something, he said. Pamela's been going door to door, talking to people.
About what?
About you. He scratched the back of his neck. She's telling neighbors she's concerned about your behavior. She said, and I'm quoting directly, "I've seen men like him before. Sitting alone in cars at night? That's not normal behavior. I'm doing this to protect your children." That sentence hit me in the chest like a closed fist. She wasn't hiding behind property values anymore. She was going door to door, telling parents that the man on Sycamore Trail, whose 9-year-old son played with their kids, was a danger to their children. Because I sat in my own truck, in my own driveway, reading my phone. Shelby found out before I could tell her. One of the neighborhood moms texted, "Hey, just wanted you to know, Pamela said some things about Garrett at the pool yesterday. I don't believe a word of it, but I thought you should hear it from a friend first." Shelby was white-faced when she showed me the text. Not scared, furious. The kind of fury that's too big for yelling, so it just sits there behind the eyes like a pilot light. "She's telling people you're a threat to children, Garrett. Our son goes to school with their kids. What happens when the school catches wind of this?" I held her hands. They were ice cold, even in the middle of a Georgia June. That week, I knocked on 3 doors. No badge, no title, just a neighbor asking questions. The Pelletiers, the Stanfords, the Winfields. All 3 confirmed the same pattern. Pamela had done this before. Same script, different targets. The Pelletiers told me about the Delgado family, Ernesto and Maria, a young couple with 2 kids. Pamela called the police on them 4 times in 3 months. Noise complaints, suspicious gatherings, an unlicensed business, which turned out to be Maria teaching piano lessons from her living room. The Delgados sold at a 12% loss and moved to Covington. The Stanfords brought up Lyle Crawford, single father, 1 daughter, age 12. Pamela reported him to CPS, claiming unsafe living conditions and possible neglect. CPS investigated, found nothing. The damage was permanent. Lyle moved within 90 days. His daughter started therapy. Mrs. Pelletier came back with a photocopy of a letter Pamela had sent Lyle before he left. "If you continue to disregard community standards, I will be forced to escalate my concerns regarding the welfare of the minor child in your household." Same ink, same threats, same playbook, different family. Here's what Georgia law says. Under OCGA Section 51-5-4, knowingly making false statements accusing someone of being a danger to children constitutes defamation per se. Damages are presumed. You don't have to prove you lost a job or a contract. The accusation itself is the injury. The law treats it as one of the most serious forms of defamation that exists. I drove home, opened the Thornton folder. It was almost an inch thick now. Violation letters, camera footage, county complaint receipts, neighbor statements, and now documented evidence that Pamela was using child safety as a weapon. I wasn't just collecting documents anymore. I was building an indictment. The next Monday, I submitted a formal open records request through Gwinnett County for all 911 calls placed from Pamela Thornton's registered phone number and residential address within the past 6 years. I didn't pull strings. I filed it the same way any citizen could. Online portal, $10 fee, 14-day turnaround. The difference was that I knew exactly what to request and how to read what came back. The results arrived 11 days later. 43 printed pages of dispatch logs and responding officer notes. 47 calls, 6 years. Not a single one resulted in an arrest, a citation, or a confirmed violation. Every call was either unfounded, cleared on scene, or no action warranted. I spread the pages across my kitchen table and started with a yellow highlighter. The pattern was surgical. Every call targeted someone who had recently moved in, someone who rented instead of owned, or someone who had publicly challenged Pamela at a board meeting. The Delgado family. 4 calls in 3 months. Noise, suspicious gatherings, unauthorized commercial activity. All cleared. They left within the year. The Crawford family. 3 911 calls plus the CPS report. All unfounded. They left within 90 days. A couple on Birchfield Lane. 2 calls, followed by a parking violation that triggered a lien on their house. They refinanced at a loss and moved out. 2 more families. Same story. Different names, same result. 5 households erased from the neighborhood in 6 years, each one preceded by a barrage of false reports and fabricated violations. Then I requested the HOA financial records. Every homeowner in Georgia has the legal right to request an audit of their HOA's financial statements. It's written into most CC and Rs, and it's reinforced by state law under OCGA Section 44-3-223. You submit a written request to the board, and they have 30 days to provide complete and accurate records. Most people never bother. Most people trust their board. That's usually where the trouble starts. The financials came from Doug Thornton, Pamela's husband, retired Gwinnett County tax assessor, and the HOA's self-appointed treasurer for the last 7 years. At first glance, the books looked clean. Dues collected, expenses logged, balances carried forward. But I've spent 2 decades reading financial documents connected to criminal investigations. I know what clean looks like, and I know what clean but wrong looks like. Over 4 years, $38,400 had been paid to an entity called Thornton Landscape Services. That was Doug's side company, registered to their home address. The invoices described landscaping work at the community pool, the entrance median, and the clubhouse perimeter. But the community pool hadn't been re-landscaped in 3 years. Hank confirmed it. The Pelletiers confirmed it. The entrance median still had the same overgrown boxwoods it had had since 2019. I drove past Pamela's house on a Thursday evening. Her backyard was partially visible from the cross street. New flagstone patio, professional hardscaping, custom planters, a cedar pergola with string lights and a built-in bar. And sitting inside their pool house, technically HOA community property, but padlocked and temporarily closed for maintenance for 26 months, was a set of outdoor furniture that matched a receipt in the HOA books for $4,200. They were billing the neighborhood for their own backyard renovation. I sat in my truck outside their house for about 2 minutes. The sprinklers were running in perfect arcs. The air smelled like fresh mulch and old money. The highlighter stain on my fingers was still yellow from the 911 logs. Then I picked up the phone and called DA Lorraine Beckett. Lorraine, it's Garrett Calloway. I need to walk you through something. It's in your county and it's going to need a warrant. She listened for 45 minutes without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. How soon can you bring me the file? Over the next 3 weeks, DA Beckett and I built the case like a structure that had to hold weight. Foundation first, walls second, nothing out of sequence. The evidence package filled 2 binders and a thumb drive. 47 911 call transcripts with dispatcher notes, responding officer reports, each one stamped unfounded or no action taken. 14 months of security camera footage from my driveway. The complete HOA financial audit with annotated discrepancies. Bank statements showing direct deposits into Thornton Landscape Services. Receipts for flagstone, pergola materials, and patio furniture. All billed to the HOA, all sitting in Pamela's backyard. But numbers and documents are the skeleton. The testimony is what gives a case its muscle. I tracked down 3 of the 5 families Pamela had driven from Ridgewood. 2 agreed to give sworn statements immediately. Ernesto Delgado drove up from Covington with his wife Maria. They sat across from me in Beckett's conference room. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of old case files and burnt coffee, and told their story. Pamela had called the police every time they had more than 4 cars in their driveway. She told the responding officer we were running an illegal restaurant out of our home, Ernesto said. My wife had made tamales for her sister's birthday party. Lyle Crawford was harder to reach. He'd moved to Macon with his daughter and had changed his number. When I finally got through and explained what I was building, there was a silence so long I thought the call had dropped. Then his voice cracked. She told CPS I was neglecting my daughter. I had to hire a lawyer I couldn't afford, borrowed money from my brother, just to prove I was a decent father. My girl was 12. She didn't understand why a stranger in a pantsuit was asking about her bedroom and whether she ate breakfast every morning. He stopped, breathed. She's 14 now. She's on the honor roll, wants to be a veterinarian, but she still doesn't talk about it. I recorded every word with his permission. Beckett marked it as Exhibit 14. The legal strategy was layered and specific. Under Georgia law, a single false police report is a misdemeanor, a fine, maybe probation, nothing that rearranges your life. But 47 false reports over 6 years, all targeting the same category of victim, all designed to intimidate, harass, and displace families from their homes. That's a pattern. And under OCGA Section 16-5-90, a documented pattern of conduct intended to harass, intimidate, or cause substantial emotional distress can be charged as felony stalking and harassment. The pattern is what elevates it from annoying to criminal. Add the embezzlement. $38,400 funneled through a shell landscaping company into the Thorntons' personal accounts, and you've got theft by conversion under OCGA Section 16-8-4. Add the false CPS report against Lyle Crawford, filed knowingly and maliciously, and you've got another brick in the wall. My role was clear. I would serve as the arresting officer. As police chief, I held law enforcement authority within Gwinnett County. Beckett confirmed jurisdiction, reviewed the chain of evidence, and had the warrant drafted. But we agreed on one condition. We'd wait. Not because we needed more evidence. We had enough to bury Pamela Thornton twice over. We'd wait for one more 911 call, one more provocation, fresh, witnessed, and undeniable, so the pattern wouldn't just be documented on paper, but alive in the room when it mattered. I drove to Hank Sellers' house that Saturday, sat on his back porch while the sun sank behind the pine line, and the air turned heavy with that copper-tinged sweetness Georgia gets right before a summer thunderstorm rolls in. When the time comes, I told him, I'm going to need you at the next HOA meeting, and I need the Pelletiers and the Stanfords there too. He set down his beer, looked at me over the rim of his glasses. I've been waiting 9 years for somebody to say that to me. That night, Shelby found me in the bedroom, staring at the desk drawer. Is this personal? She asked. I thought about Colton's face pressed against his bedroom window, watching a stranger try to steal our truck. I thought about Shelby standing in the driveway, being told she couldn't control her husband. I thought about Lyle Crawford's daughter, 14 years old, honor roll student, still carrying the scar of a CPS investigation that should never have happened. It was personal the day she told our neighbors I was a danger to children, I said. Now it's professional. I opened the drawer. Inside was a sealed manila envelope. Inside that was a warrant. Pamela Thornton's name was printed at the top in block letters. I closed the drawer and turned off the light. The flyers appeared on a Thursday morning, tucked into every mailbox on every street in Ridgewood Estates. I found the first one backing out of my driveway at 6:15 a.m. Cream-colored paper, folded once, no envelope. The header read, "Community Safety Alert, Ridgewood Estates." Below that, in bold 14-point type, the Callaway family at 1247 Sycamore Trail is currently under investigation by local authorities. Residents are advised to exercise extreme caution and report any unusual activity to the HOA board immediately. No source attribution, no date, no board approval stamp. Just Pamela's printer, Pamela's paper, and Pamela's lies, stuffed into 180 mailboxes under cover of darkness like propaganda leaflets dropped from a plane nobody asked for. I photographed the flyer on my mailbox. Then I drove the entire subdivision loop, 7 streets, and photographed 6 more, each one pulled from a different box. Timestamp, GPS location, paper stock, font match, all documented, all saved to the cloud drive. But paper can be collected and filed. What it does to a 9-year-old can't be. Colton came home from school that afternoon and dropped his backpack by the front door without saying a word. He walked past Shelby, past the kitchen, past the baseball glove by the back door, and went straight to his room. That wasn't Colton. Colton always came through the door talking, about batting practice, about what his teacher said, about the weird lunch the kid next to him brought. Shelby went up. She found him sitting on his bed, still wearing his shoes, staring at the carpet. "Tyler asked me if we're going to jail," he said. Tyler Patterson, his best friend since the first week of school, the kid on the next block who knocked on our door every Saturday morning at 8 sharp asking if Colton could play. He said his mom got a paper that says our family is being investigated. He asked if my dad did something bad. Colton was 9. He didn't know what investigations meant. He didn't understand allegations, defamation, or HOA politics. All he understood was that his best friend had looked at him differently that morning, and that something had changed overnight. Shelby held him for a long time in that bedroom. Then she came downstairs and found me in the kitchen, standing at the counter with the flyer in my hand. "Garrett." Her voice was flat and controlled, the voice she uses in the ER when things are bad and emotions have to wait. "I can't watch our son get destroyed by this woman. You need to do something." I set the flyer down. "I am. I just can't show her yet." The next day, it escalated again. Pamela called Colton's school. She identified herself as a concerned community leader from the Ridgewood Estates neighborhood and asked to speak with the principal. The receptionist transferred her to the administrative assistant. There, Pamela said, "The Callaway family in our neighborhood is currently involved in an ongoing legal matter. As someone responsible for community safety, I believe it's my duty to make sure the children at your school are adequately protected." The school called Shelby at work, during a 12-hour shift, in the middle of treating a patient with chest pain. "Mrs. Callaway, this is Linda at Pine Grove Elementary. We received a call from a community representative expressing concerns about your family situation. We wanted to verify, is there anything we should be aware of regarding your son's home environment?" Shelby, a registered nurse, a woman who spends her days keeping strangers alive, had to step into a hospital hallway, lean against the supply closet door, and explain to a school administrator that her family was not under investigation, not involved in any legal matter, and not a threat to anyone's children. She did it calmly, professionally, and then she hung up and cried in the break room for 10 minutes before going back to her patient. When she told me that night, something shifted behind my sternum. Not rage, something colder and more precise. Something that clicks into place like a round being chambered. I called D.A. Beckett. Lorraine. She called our son's school, told them we're under investigation. We are not under investigation. Pause. Then, steady. That strengthens the harassment charge considerably. Document everything. Time, date, staff name, exact words. I did. Call log from the school, obtained through a records request. Name of the administrative assistant. Timestamp. Shelby's account, written and signed. Added to Exhibit 19. That night, I sat at the kitchen table after everyone was asleep. The house ticked and settled around me. The AC hummed. I could smell the coffee from a pot I'd made 3 hours ago and never touched. I opened the desk drawer. looked at the warrant. Not yet. One more call. One more. I closed the drawer and stared at the ceiling for a long time before I turned off the light. Pamela called the emergency HOA meeting on a Monday. The notice hit mailboxes with exactly 48 hours warning, the bare minimum under the CC&R, and the agenda listed one item: vote on proposed restricted vehicle ordinance. The proposal would prohibit any vehicle over 10 years old from being parked in a driveway or visible from the street. $300 per day fine. Enforcement authority resting exclusively with the HOA president. A law written for one person. My truck, my driveway, my family. Wednesday night. Ridgewood Community Clubhouse. Flat-roofed brick building that always smelled like chlorine, floor wax, and whatever casserole the last potluck left behind. 83 residents packed into a room designed for 60. Folding chairs squeaked against tile. The AC unit rattled in the ceiling like it was fighting for its life. Pamela was at the front podium, clipboard angled like a teleprompter. Doug sat behind her at a card table, laptop open, wearing the blank expression of a man who'd spent 30 years married to a hurricane. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Pamela opened. This community was built on standards. Property values in Ridgewood have increased 12% over the past 5 years, and that did not happen by accident. It happened because we have rules, and because we enforce them. She paused, practiced at this. The cadence, the authority, the way she made covenants sound like scripture. But some people move into a neighborhood and decide the rules don't apply to them. Her eyes didn't find me. They didn't need to. We have standards, and tonight we need to decide whether we want those kinds of people representing what Ridgewood stands for. The room went still. Shelby squeezed my hand under the folding chair. Hank Sellers stood up, 63 years old, hands like leather, voice like a diesel engine turning over slow. Pamela, I've lived in this neighborhood for 11 years. You fined me for a garden hose. You fined the Crawfords for a basketball hoop that was 2 inches over a limit you made up. You called the police on the Delgado family because their music was too ethnic. And you told Lyle Crawford you'd report him to CPS if he didn't repaint his shutters the color you picked. He paused. When does it stop? Murmurs rippled through the rows. Someone in the back said, quietly but clearly, "It's true." Mrs. Pelletier stood next. She fined us for having a holiday wreath on our door in July because it wasn't seasonally appropriate. A wreath on our own front door. Carl Stanford rose from the 4th row. She reported our dog as a dangerous animal because he barked at the mailman. We had to attend a county hearing. Our dog weighs 11 pounds. One by one, they stood. Not yelling, just stating plain facts. 9 years of petty tyranny stacking up in that chlorine-scented room like evidence exhibits at a trial. Pamela gripped the edges of the podium, crimson creeping from her collar to her hairline. "We are here to vote," she said. Her voice was still controlled, but the edges were cracking. Not to air personal grievances. "Then let's vote," Hank said. He didn't sit down. 67 against, 14 for. The ordinance was dead before it drew its first legal breath. Pamela slammed her clipboard on the podium. The crack echoed off the cinder block walls. "Fine." Her voice was a blade now. "If you people won't protect this neighborhood, I will." She walked out. Doug trailed 3 steps behind, carrying the laptop against his chest like a shield. Shelby and I headed for the truck. The night air carried the sweet scent of mimosa blossoms from the clubhouse entrance. A whippoorwill called somewhere beyond the tree line. We almost made it. "You think you won something tonight?" Pamela, behind us, standing next to the Escalade, close enough that I could see the broken capillaries in her cheeks and smell the coffee and menthol on her breath. "This isn't over, Mr. Calloway. I will make your life so miserable you'll beg to leave this neighborhood, just like the others did." I held her gaze for a count of 3. "Good night, Mrs. Thornton." Got in the truck, pulled out in silence. At the first red light, I typed one text to D.A. Beckett. "She's going to call again. Soon." 3 dots appeared, then one word. "Ready." The 48th call came on a Saturday. I was in the driveway washing the F-150 with Colton. Garden hose in one hand, sponge in the other, a bucket of soapy water between us. Colton had taken over tire duty, which mostly meant getting more water on his shorts than on the rubber. Shelby was on the front porch with a novel and a glass of lemonade. The Georgia sun was high enough to bleach the concrete white, and the water on the truck's hood turned to steam before it could drip. I saw the Escalade at the far end of Sycamore Trail. It moved slow, predatory. Pamela drove past once, then circled at the cul-de-sac and parked 4 houses down. I watched her pull out her phone. I knew. Before the call connected, I knew. I kept washing the truck, helped Colton reach the door handle. He laughed because the soap bubbles were sliding down the chrome bumper in shapes he said looked like jellyfish. And for one slow-motion second, I wanted to freeze that sound forever. 12 minutes later, 2 patrol cars turned onto Sycamore Trail. No lights, no sirens. Officer Wade Pruitt, 3rd time on my driveway, and a younger officer, name tag reading Dunlap. Mr. Calloway, we received a call. Complainant reports threatening behavior and aggressive use of a motor vehicle. She states you were revving the engine in a threatening manner directed at pedestrians. I looked at the garden hose in my hand. I looked at Colton, sitting on the front step eating a red popsicle, shorts soaked through. I looked at the F-150, engine off for 2 hours, dripping wet, covered in suds. The truck hasn't been running since 9 a.m., Wade. I know. He lowered his voice so only I could hear. I know. By now, the street had come alive. Hank, coffee mug in hand, the Pelletiers, the Stanfords with their 11-pound menace on a leash. 25 people standing on porches and sidewalks, watching. I set down the sponge, dried my hands on my jeans, felt the sun pressing on the back of my neck. Then I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my badge wallet, flipped it open. My name is Garrett Calloway. I'm the chief of police of the city of Briarfield. Pruitt's mouth opened. Dunlap took a half step backward. Across the street, Hank Sellers set his coffee down and let out a breath he'd been holding for 9 years. And I have a warrant for the arrest of Pamela Thornton. I pulled the sealed warrant from the F-150's center console and handed it to Pruitt. Then I walked. Down the sidewalk. Past 3 houses. Toward the Escalade, where Pamela was still sitting with her phone in her lap, watching. Mrs. Thornton, please step out of the vehicle. What? Her voice cracked like dry wood. What are you can't, you're the truck man. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. She got out slowly. Her clipboard slid off the passenger seat, hit the asphalt, and scattered papers across the curb. Nobody moved to pick them up. Pamela Thornton, you are under arrest. 47 counts of filing false police reports, 1 count of felony harassment, embezzlement of homeowners association funds, and filing a false report with Child Protective Services. This is insane. Her voice went shrill enough to carry across 3 lawns. I am the president of this homeowners association. You cannot arrest me. I protect this neighborhood. I unclipped the handcuffs from my belt. Standard issue, stainless steel. The sound they made closing around Pamela Thornton's wrists, that small, precise, metallic click, was the most satisfying sound I had heard in a very long time. Ma'am, that title is exactly why I can. Pruitt opened the rear door of his patrol car. Pamela looked over her shoulder at the crowd. Neighbors she'd fined, bullied, threatened, and controlled for 9 years. Not one of them looked away. Doug Thornton burst out of their front door in tube socks and a bathrobe, face the color of cottage cheese. Pamela, what's happening? Dunlap stepped forward calmly. Mr. Thornton, you're going to want to call a lawyer, for both of you. Pamela was guided into the back seat. The door closed with a solid thunk that bounced off every garage door like a period at the end of a very long sentence. The patrol car pulled away. The Escalade sat at the curb, empty, clipboard papers fluttering in the breeze. Colton was standing on the front step with the wet sponge still in his hand. Shelby had her hand over her mouth. Someone started clapping, slow at first. Then the Stanfords, then Hank, then the whole street, a wave rolling down Sycamore Trail like thunder after the lightning has already struck. I walked back up my driveway and sat down next to Colton on the front step. Dad, he said, are you a policeman? Yeah, buddy, I am. He thought about that for a second. Cool. Pamela Thornton was processed at the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office that afternoon. Bail was set at $75,000. Doug was brought in 2 days later, theft by conversion, and conspiracy to defraud the Ridgewood Estates HOA. The board held an emergency session the following week. The remaining 2 members, both of whom admitted they'd been too afraid of Pamela to challenge a single vote, appointed Hank Sellers as interim president. His first motion: cancel every outstanding violation Pamela had issued in 12 months. 43 violations, erased in 1 vote. A forensic audit confirmed every dollar I'd flagged. Thornton Landscape Services had never performed a single hour of work. Every invoice was fabricated. Every payment went to Pamela's house: the flagstone patio, the pergola, the pool house furniture. $38,400 laundered through fake landscaping receipts. The community voted unanimously to pursue civil recovery. Within 2 weeks, 3 of the 5 families Pamela had driven away made contact. Ernesto Delgado called from Covington. "I saw it on the neighborhood Facebook page," he said. His voice was thick. "Maria cried when she read it. She hasn't driven through Ridgewood since we left, but yesterday she said she wants to go back, just to drive down the street, just to see it without being afraid." Lyle Crawford called from Macon. His voice was steadier now, but there was still a heaviness beneath it, the kind that doesn't fully lift even when the weight is gone. "You did what I couldn't," he said. "I was too tired, too broke, too scared of losing my daughter over a fight I didn't think anyone would ever help me win." He paused. "She's 14 now, honor roll. She wants to be a vet, and for the first time in 2 years she asked me if we could get a dog." The community didn't just move on. They built something. The Ridgewood Neighbors Legal Aid Fund. Free legal consultations for any homeowner facing HOA abuse or harassment disguised as governance. Seeded with the recovered embezzlement money, 3 attorneys volunteered pro bono. In 6 months, the fund helped 11 families across 4 subdivisions challenge fraudulent fines and force financial audits their boards had been dodging for years. Colton's friend, Tyler Patterson, came back the Saturday after the arrest, walked through the front door, and announced to the kitchen, "My mom says your dad is a hero." Colton was spreading peanut butter on a piece of bread. He looked up. "He's just my dad." I stood at the sink washing a coffee mug and felt something loosen in my chest that had been locked tight for months. A few weeks later, Shelby and I were sitting on the front porch after dinner, the kind of Georgia twilight where the sky moves from orange to lavender to deep blue like someone turning a dimmer switch on the whole world. Fireflies blinked across the front yard. Colton and Tyler were throwing a baseball in the grass, their shadows stretching long toward the tree line. "You could have told her who you were on day 1, Shelby said. I watched Colton wind up for a throw. Then she would have behaved around me and kept hurting everyone else." Shelby nodded, sipped her tea, leaned into my shoulder. Down the street, the driveway where the white Escalade used to park was empty. Someone, I never found out who, had planted a row of marigolds along the front walkway. Bright yellow. The kind of thing Pamela would have fined them for. This is what home feels like. If you've ever lived under an HOA bully, someone who used the rules as a weapon, filed false complaints, or tried to make you feel like a trespasser in your own neighborhood, drop your story in the comments below. You're not alone, and you are not crazy. And if you want to hear what happens when a corrupt developer picks a fight with a retired building inspector who knows every code violation in the book, hit that subscribe button and stick around. Because that story, it might be even wilder than this one.
And that's where this one ends. A quiet man holding out a badge and a warrant, standing in the same driveway where a tow truck tried to steal his truck 2 months earlier. Pamela Thornton didn't lose because she picked the wrong target. She lost because she'd been picking wrong targets for 9 years, and nobody ever made it cost her anything. She treated 911 like a customer service line. She treated the HOA treasury like her personal checking account, and she got away with it. Until one man decided to do what everybody wished they could. The real lesson isn't about having the badge. It's about documentation. A violation letter Garrett saved, every camera he installed, every neighbor statement he collected. That's what built the case. Patient and paper built the case. Where the time came, Pamela had nothing to say because the evidence was a foot thick and her clipboard was empty. If you've ever dealt with someone like Pamela, someone who weaponized rules to make your life miserable, drop your story in the comments and hit subscribe because next week we've got a corrupt developer who picked a fight with a retired build inspector that man knew every code in the book. The developer didn't